Hello and welcome back to this painting recap series where I basically talk about the models I've painted over the past month. Except, in this case, it's over the past 6 months or so. The reason for the hiatus is because I moved house, and it turns out that moving house and rewriting a book and trying to hold down a normal job meant that I had zero time to paint or game or do any hobby, and it's only in the past month that I've actually been able to get back and get some work done on the really important things in life, namely tiny plastic soldiers. It may be actually that some of the things I show you in this video I did a little bit of work on earlier in the year, before this past month, but at any rate, they were painted between the last video and this one. Starting off with the Skellingtons from Cursed City. I absolutely adore these models. I think they were the main reason really that I got the box, and they were a real delight to paint. The name of the game here was Speed. I deliberately tried to paint these quickly, so I actually made use of a bunch of techniques to make life as easy as possible. So these guys were mostly painted with contrast paints and then an oil wash. First time I'd ever used oils, inspired by the fantastic channel Ninjon, and once you get the hang of it, it is so easy. Though I will say that if you are going to do an oil wash, unless you want your model to look completely glossy, follow it up with a matte varnish, which I did through an airbrush. I use AK Ultra Matte Varnish, and it does a really good job. Once I'd done the contrast step and the oil wash step, then basically it was just a question of going in and picking out extra highlights. I was very happy with how the verdigris metal came out, which was basically a bronze layer that was then hit up with some contrast greens and kind of blues for verdigris, then given a Nuln oil wash, and then given a light dry brush of a kind of pale, silvery, bronzy kind of color to represent sort of the chipping on the edges. The other thing that's worth noting on these models is that I tried to tie them together in a color theory sense, with having red robes and then having their armor glazed, quite obviously in some cases and quite subtly in others, down to a dark blue, so it sort of contrasted. And that then carries over to the purple that is present on the banner bearer and on the champion. With these guys done, I'm very excited to move on to the rest of Cursed City. I want to spend a lot of time on the characters, but before then, I've got to plow through the creatures and the zombies and all of the objective stuff. So looking forward to that. Next up, this unit of Grotz. Not a huge amount to say here. They're pretty much exactly the same as the big boys, just on a smaller scale. They were a delight to paint in, I think, a single stream. So again, following the same recipe of contrast paints and then picking out some extra stuff with the normal GW range. I will say though that this little guy might be my favorite model now in my entire collection, because he just wants to eat his ice cream, and he's a goblin. He's too stupid to know he has to take off his welding mask. I love him and I will protect him. Something that I definitely don't want to love and protect is this Lichter. So this is a model that I've been scared to work on for a really long time, because I knew I wanted to do some on-source lighting via a lamp underneath, so he looks kind of spoopy and give him the old glowing gooch. And I also wanted to do resin and have water effects. And I think the lighting actually went pretty well. I cheated, basically, by drilling a hole through the base where the lamp would be, and then airbrushed first a small amount of white paint to give you the highlight, then yellow ink to fill in the recesses and sort of saturate the shadows and also sort of take the sheen off of the white, and then to finish off a very thin coat of white paint to make the yellow more desaturated the closer it got to the source, which is how light behaves. It looks pretty good. I think in future I might not do the white paint step first and just go straight to the yellow ink, or the color of the light ink. The resin was a different story. I had seen tutorials on this, and so what I did was cover the edge of the base with a kind of perimeter, a rim made of post-it notes, filled in with ultraviolet activated resin, which I got from Green Stuff World, and then hit it with the ultraviolet torch, which is what they tell you to do in the tutorials. But then when I took off the perimeter, the top layer had cured and the bottom layer was still liquid, and it just flowed out, and I was left with this thin crust of what looked like dried Coke Zero and just a cavity underneath. So after that I had to go in and fill it with the UV resin and hit it with the torch in small sections. So let this be a lesson to you. If you want to do resin work and you want to use the UV cured stuff from Green Stuff World, make sure that you do it in thin layers, because when they build up you actually can't tell, but you actually cure them that way. Overall, I think he looks pretty good, and to be honest, for a first try for some of these techniques, I'm pretty happy, but I definitely could tidy up the base a bit. And that just leaves... I actually can't fit this guy in the frame. I'm literally gonna have to change lens. This is the Dimmacaron that was kindly bought for me by my followers on Twitch, and it's huge. It is, I cannot stress enough. Look, here's a skeleton for scale. Just how enormous this model is. I haven't glued it together yet. I have got some brass rod in there, which I had to wait ages, if you may remember from previous videos, to get. But the brass rod has been inserted and all the stuff is pinned together. But I need to glue it and do some gap filling with some milliput and get rid of some mold lines. And there's a couple of extra spikes that need to be glued on. But it's basically together, and oh boy, this is going to be a lot of work. The airbrush is going to get a long tour of duty on this model. And that's all I had a chance to work on between the last video and this one. Hopefully between this video and the next one, I'll get more opportunities to sit down and paint. And especially seeing as it's October, maybe it's time to finally forge ahead and get those surfers done. In fact, I might do that on stream this week. Thank you for watching this one, and hopefully I'll be back in a month with a bit more progress.